Welcome to episode 28 of Let's Talk Money with Wendy Silebi. Wow, can you believe it? We are on episode 28, and today we are at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, where we are having a conversation with Lyndwell Clark, who is the head of consumer financial education. Welcome, Lyndwell.
Welcome to you too, and welcome to the FSCA, and thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, thank you. Usually in the podcast when we start, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves, to tell us as much or as little as what they'd like about themselves.
Okay, cool. So you know my name, Lyndwell Clark. I normally call myself a teacher by trade, but an educator by profession. So I've been in the business for about 30 odd years. I've been a teacher, I've been a district official, I've been a provincial official. I've also been a National Department Education official, working in curriculum innovation up to around 2006. When I joined the then FSB, the Financial Sector Services Board. And the reason why they came to me was they wanted somebody to elevate financial education into the formal education system. And then since then, obviously I became project manager and I became head of a department. And my biggest role was in the FSCA is to interpret the legislation, to take the messaging out to consumers around regulation. What does it mean? What does the FSCA do? But we couldn't just keep it to that point. We also had to look at what are people's understanding of money and finances. So in order for us to regulate, we needed to know, so we regulate the industry and what they do. But what do consumers know when it comes to what kind of questions do I ask? Who do I deal with? And how do I ensure that I only deal with authorized financial services providers?
Yeah.
And I think that was the departure point when I came to the FSCA and the FSB and now FSCA, is how do I make consumers understand what are their rights, but also what are the responsibilities when you deal with authorized financial service providers.
And if you look at what the NCR does and what the FSCA does, is I just from what you were describing, I see some synergies.
Some similarities, yes.
Similarities, yeah. How do the two work together?
First of all, the FSCA reports to National Treasury, whereas the National Credit Regulator reports to the Department of Trade and Industry. They regulate credit and credit providers.
Yes.
Whereas the FSCA looks at the conduct of all financial institutions in terms of banks, insurance, retirement funds. So it's more from a compliance point of view. And then we work together with the Prudential Authority, keeping in mind that the FSCA and the Prudential Authority was formed through the Twin Peaks approach. Or the Twin Peaks, where the Reserve Bank and the Prudential Authority looking at the bank's stability of financial institutions from a prudential point of view, and the FSCA then looks at the conduct of business. How do you treat your customers? Are you treating them fairly? So that's the big difference, is that we do not regulate credit and credit providers, whereas the National Credit Regulator do that. But the legislation does make provision for all of the regulators to sit on a council of regulators, which is run through the National Treasury. And we obviously work very closely with them, especially when it comes to financial education, because you can't do financial education if you don't address debt and credit.
Yes.
So that's where we work quite closely together.
Okay, that's awesome. So I think you've already given us, a bit about what the role of the FSCA is. And I want to come to your current role as head of consumer financial education, which is a pet for me because I've been head of consumer financial education at the institution that I work for, and I'm very, very passionate about it. So maybe just share with us what your role is about, in the CFE space.
Yeah, so from my side, I joined as a project manager, trying to get financial education into the school system, which I must say I'm still battling to do, because although we have certain subjects in the school system, it is more from an academic point rather than the skills. And I think for me, financial education is a life skill. It's not an academic test that you need to tick the boxes, you know. So my role, basically, I run a financial education unit called the Consumer Education Department. We have about 15 staff members. We then do various financial education programs and projects going into communities, going into schools. But more recently, we've actually changed that role, because from an FSCA point of view and a thought leader in the industry, we thought, why don't we change that as from a thought leader in the industry to a thought leader around issues of financial education? How do we start a project, for instance, do the pilot, get the monitoring and evaluation, find out what this project is about, and then take it into the rest of the financial sector and say, now, this is what we found to be best practice. And then you take it forward. And I think for us, this is the important part, because it seems that currently we have some challenges with coordination and coordinating for various financial aspects. So we look to, obviously, the National Treasury. They're busy developing a policy through which the FSA obviously provide lots of input. Then we'll develop our second national strategy and obviously a big financial implementation plan. So my role basically currently is to, first of all, make sure that we have financial education projects and programs. So these are workshops, road shows, we've got a speech competition which I'll speak about a little bit more. We're very involved in our Money Smart Week South Africa. My role is to get all of that, put that together, but also then try to be a thought leader from a strategic point of view. How do we integrate what we do for financial education in the other roles of the FSCA? Yes. Remember, as a regulator, we regulate the industry. Then you got financial education, which is to do with the consumer facing. I mean, I joined the FSB, I said, these two words don't go together, finance and education. Because finance is legalese, it is do's and don'ts, and sign at the dotted line. Education is pedagogical point of view. How do people learn? How do you make people understand certain concepts? And then eventually, after a very long, let's not call it a battle, discussions internally, we realized that we cannot go out and take a legal document to consumers and send to them, do you understand paragraph 5, section 2 of the FSR Act? Yeah. We have to interpret it for them and say to them, based on this law or this regulation, this is your rights. Yes. This is how you should be treated as a customer. But this is also your responsibility. You need to make sure you know what you're signing for. And obviously, I think we'll probably talk about scams later on. Yeah. And this is part of my role, is to inform you to such a point that you have the confidence to make that financial decision and identify the person that wants to sell you a product, where the interest is like 50%. So you can get, if you put in your money now, in 2 days' time, I'll return it with 50%. Yeah. Now, we know our inflation rate is about just under 6 at the moment. Yeah. Where do you find any investment that pays you that amount within 2 days?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you've just touched on something very important, Lyndwill, and I think before we started the recording, I was just sharing with you how I made financial decisions without having the skills and the knowledge to even understand the consequences of what those decisions would mean at a later stage. So I think the work that you are doing is really amazing, because we really need to educate our consumers out there to possess those skills and the knowledge that when they make decisions, every decision every financial decision has got consequences. Yeah. And I truly love the fact that, you have to take complex legal, terminology, and really bring it down to the level of the person that you are engaging with. And this is what I loved about CFE, Consumer Financial Education, because it forced us to then educate at NQF level 1
At all levels.
and 2 and then odd levels. But really, when you take it to a different consumer, know which level to pitch at.
Exactly.
And that for me is what I love about what you do. So, I mean, there's also a document there, that regulates what we do. It's called the GN 500, and it's got its own rules and regulations. Can you share a little bit about what it says in terms of education, especially when we are educating in the rural areas where people have been financially excluded for so long?
Yeah, I'll touch on that in a minute, but I want to touch on what you said, that you didn't know exactly, as a youngster, where do we get our youngsters? How do we educate them around the value of money? And as we talk, I'll just mention some of the projects that we're doing as well, so that we can get an understanding. So we also realize that from a tertiary education level, and even those learners that don't go into tertiary, after matric, they don't go to tertiary education, how do we reach them? How do we reach the informal sector? Because we've got a huge informal sector. We know that unemployment is very high in the country. So we've got projects in tertiary education and universities. We've got projects within our communities. We have projects in grade 11. We've got a speech competition that we run. And more recently, like I told you just before we started the podcast, we've moved into early childhood development. We've got a speech festival for grade R learners, where we're actually looking at what's the value of money and what can you buy for 100 rand. Okay. And all of this, as you said, there are certain rules and regulations around how to conduct financial education projects and programs. And your guidance note 500, which comes through the Financial Sector Transformation Council, says that, the codes, the financial sector code says that all financial institutions need to pay or use 0.4% of their net profit after tax on financial education. Now, a lot of institutions have done brilliantly around this. They've actually used that money, gone into the guidance note says, I think it's a 60-40 split into the rural and urban areas, gone into the rural areas, made use of the money very, very effectively. Unfortunately, we get the good with the bad. Some people have used it as a tick box exercise. Some people have said, some companies have said, hey, can't get some marketing out of this, and then under the guise of financial education, they do their marketing as well. In addition, now, what's now been happening more lately, what we've drafted from the FSCA are conduct standards for financial education. So that's in the process. We've gone out, we've had a consultation document. So that will guide financial institutions. At this stage, it's only applicable to institutions that we regulate and those that are doing financial education. Okay. So it is around logistics, it is around target groups, it's around content, it goes around reporting. Okay, it goes around how do you measure whether you've been successful or not. And all of those are taken up into in the GN 500. And companies, obviously, because of the codes, they have to comply.
Yeah.
The conduct standards will be subordinate legislation.
Yeah.
And we are currently working with the Financial Sector Transformation Council to see how can we take the GN 500 and the conduct standards and then draft one set of guidelines. Because you can't have the FSCA doing one thing and the code saying another thing. So we need to work together so that the industry don't get confused around that. Yeah. So we work a lot at national level. There's a National Consumer Financial Education Committee, which is chaired through Treasury, and the FSA provides secretarial support. And it's at that level that we are trying now to coordinate financial education in the country. Right. And there's one thing I want to mention, and I have to read this off as well. So about 3 weeks ago, right smack bang in the middle of Money Smart Week on the 28th of August, we had a financial education summit where we brought together various leaders in the industry, from banks to insurance to retirement funds, where and for me personally, it was to elevate the conversation. So I always say, if Lyndwell speaks, or maybe even if, well, Wendy's got a bit more clout than me, but if Lyndwell speaks, nobody listens.
Yeah.
But if I get the CEO of Standard Bank, or I get the CEO of Discovery Bank, or Netbank, or I get CEO of Capitec, or financial of FNB,
Yeah.
and they sit on the platform and they discuss financial education on that level, we elevate the conversation. And it's not just an operational issue now. Now it is, how do we as a company and the financial sector strategize? When we design and develop new products, what is our thinking? Is it for the bottom line, for the profit, or is it for the need of the consumer? And this is where we talk about financial inclusion, access, and quantity of products. So how do we actually do that? And our financial, I just want to read for you the 5 commitments, and I'll send it to you at some stage.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it.
The first commitment is we adopt a financial education plan for Company X that is board approved and published. We commit to doing that.
Yes.
Number 2, we will deliver targeted financial awareness and financial education programs in line with the financial education plan. The FSCA have published the financial education plan, so the CED, that's how we do our work. And it's very readily available on our website. Okay. The third one, we will deliver financial education in line with best practice norms and standards. Commitment 4, we will strive to increase the impact of our financial education programs through suitable resourcing, strategic partnerships, and digitization. And obviously we can talk about digital financial literacy and how is that influencing the current financial sector. And number 5, we want to prioritize the financial wellness of our customers in a demonstrable way, demonstrable. So you got to show that you are doing something which is uplifting your customers and your clients and your community. And by having this commitment signed, not by Lyndwell, but by the CEO of the company, or the board has accepted this is our strategy, we can now say we've elevated the conversation. We've now brought it to a level where even the CEO of the company now thinks, let me see, what did we do for financial education this year? And it's not where he says, okay, we've achieved our target. Tick box. Let me sign this and off we go.
No, but is it in alignment?
Is it in alignment with commitments? Is it in alignment with the conduct standards? Is it in alignment with what the broader industry is saying around us? Because I also believe if we all speak, even yourself as an activist for consumer finance, if you all speak from one voice, the consumer will understand, hey, this is the story I hear from all of these people in the financial sector. Now here comes this little guy from the side and he says, I'm going to get a 50% investment. Something is wrong. Because this bank of people who are knowledgeable or in the sector, they've said something. Now let me first investigate this guy. Let me first see his paperwork. Let me see. And also, let me also see if it's not fake. We've had many of our executives where their names and the details
with AI.
It's right there on the documents, you know. So it's for us. It's and I want to say this not because it's, and I know you said it's a passion of yours. If you want to do financial education, you can't look at the bottom line. People are saying, education. Look at the matric results. I often say matric results is not a measure of the level of finance or literacy in the country. Matric results is based on academic knowledge. We haven't moved away from our old system of just bringing back knowledge. We need to start looking at cognitive abilities where I give you the information, financial literacy, and knowledge. Now I need to make you financially capable.
And confident.
To make the right decision. Then I move on. Are you now, in that process, are you financially resilient? Do you have emergency funds? And then finally, let me look at your financial well-being. If you walk into a shop today and you know where all the treats are, that's where you walk out, where you have to pay. Then there's a chocolate here and there's a chocolate there and there's this there. Do you feel confident and well enough financially to take a chocolate without thinking, it's going to hurt my budget? Whether you earn 500 Rand a month or 5,000 Rand a month.
Or 50,000.
Or 50,000 Rand a month. Am I financially well to enjoy the things that I want.
Yeah.
Things that I want, not that I need, but things that I want.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conversation that we have to, that's the value chain we have to look at.
Yeah.
Make me financially literate, make me capable and confident, and then look, and let me be resilient enough, because if something happens, and this is the other thing, something happens, you lose your job. Look what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
People either lost their jobs or their income was reduced, and they were battling.
Yeah.
And that is when we see people stop paying their premiums for the investment. They just don't even contact their creditor or their debtor. They're afraid. People don't go to work. Well, during COVID we couldn't, but I mean, you're too scared the sheriff of the court will come knock on your door, or you've been negatively listed.
Yeah.
So I think that for us is the value chain.
Right.
And if we can add to that and co-op people like yourself, other activists, but looking at the financial sector, because that's the sector we regulate, and then start pulling in maybe NGOs, people are doing stuff on their own, and start saying, this is what we want to do. This is the bigger picture. Yeah. Now, let's fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Who's doing what where? And how do we not duplicate? Because everybody in banking needs more clients. Sure. And so obviously the emphasis is going to be on banking and making sure that we have transactional banking, and not today, end of the month, my money goes in, tomorrow, because I prefer cash, I withdraw.
Yeah.
So let me first stop there, because that was a mouthful.
Wow, that was a mouthful. And I just love, the whole thread that, it's not just about financial literacy. It doesn't end there. You have to move up where you become confident, resilient, and really well, So maybe let's just bring it down. I interviewed a qualified, certified financial planner who writes books for children in one of my episodes. And I asked her the question, I said, why do you write books for children versus writing books for adults? And one of the things that she said that really made me to think long and hard is that, children's money relationship is really shaped from an early age, between that age of 1 up to 7, where not only do they learn about money, they learn from their parents. They watch what their parents do.
Exactly.
They listen to what their parents say about money, and then their outlook about money is shaped based on that. They might not say, mommy or daddy, we understand, but they're just watching and learning, and that's how they grow up. Now, I love the fact that you have just done a project with ECD kids, so I'd like us to just take it, maybe just explain to us what that is from the ECD, and then we bring it up, we talk about, and you can continue. I'll be quiet, and you can continue talking about Star Saver, Money Smart Week, and any other projects that you do in the education space. And I'm loving the thread that we're now going right there and going up to the adults.
So definitely, and you're right. I've in the same vein, my previous boss used to ask me, why do you teach financial education to people without jobs? So I said to him, it's not about whether you have the money or not. A 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, they have no concept of money. But what you're rightly saying is they listen and they learn. And what do kids do most? They mimic. They mimic. And sometimes that, mummification, only manifests later in the life. Because as they were growing up, they saw mommy and daddy do this. And this is what I'm now going to do in my life as well. The other point I'd like to make is that from a cultural perspective, we never used to talk about money. Our Tuscan family, my father was the breadwinner, my mother was a housewife. He would give her the money at the end of the month, and she had to make do, and she had to run the household. By the way, the housewives I know, is probably the best budgeters ever.
Yeah.
And the gogos getting the grants is probably the people that can budget the best.
Definitely.
They know exactly where every cent goes.
Yeah.
So we don't give our mothers that were housewives a lot of credit. And I think they deserve a lot more.
Great budgeters.
Great budgeters and great running of the family, you know. So for us, it was more about, now, how do we integrate all of this and take it almost on a, like you say, that thread that we need to run from early age to school level. What do you need to know in schools to tertiary education? But then beyond that, because part of what we're doing with our speech competition, one of the prizes, well, the first three, the winners at grade 11 level, if they win number one and number three at national level, they get a bursary to the value of 500,000.
Wow.
1, 2, and 3. That's if they pass grade 12, obviously, with exemption, to go study at any university.
And that's a great motivator, right?
Exactly, that's the incentive.
Oh.
But we try to close the loop even further because of the unemployment I spoke about earlier on. So we need to then, once they get to university, afterwards, because we regulate this big financial sector, surely somewhere in that big financial sector, there must be a learnership or an internship when this learner leaves. At least 3 of these learners that I know of now already have become financial planners. The one is now doing she's doing her master's in commerce. The one guy has got his own podcast for financial education, which he started when he was at varsity.
Wow.
So, you know, it's all about putting that idea into your brain and say, this is what I heard when I was at this workshop or when I was at this activity. And although they were talking about finances, I didn't take notice, but now it comes back to me because I always tell them, I'm going to give you this pamphlet. You're not going to need it now, but please don't throw it away.
Yeah.
Go put it somewhere in your bookshelf or wherever you store some. And one day you'll remember, you know, the guy from the FSCA says something. Let me go look up on this thing and have a look at it.
Yeah.
We've got a project to go further into that. We also come into the community part. We started a project in the Western Cape with, and I spoke about informal in the informal sector.
Yes.
With youth, not in education, employment, or training, the so-called NEET youth.
Yes.
We started the project first where we actually went out and we did workshops with 13 NGOs. We did the workshops on their behalf. They got us the NEET youth, and we then did the workshops. Then we realized, but we can't go to the Western Cape every year or even every quarter.
Yeah.
So we asked those 13 NGOs to give us 2 of their learners. And we then put them through, or 2 of the youth, we put them through an accredited course. A course that was accredited on INFE level 5, 10 credits. You need to do a portfolio, and you've got a qualification as a facilitator for financial education.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we then said to the NGO, now you organize the workshop. We will provide you the support. We will give you the resources. We will come in and monitor and evaluate what you're doing. And that we did at the beginning of this year. In March, we did the course, and they're now busy doing workshops, and we monitor. So we're also closing that loop. We're also providing employment.
Yeah. Because
we can now also use them. We have projects in the Western Cape, and we're hoping to replicate it across the country. And it's through the Department of Social Development. And we actually find, and coming back to something I said earlier on, the integration of financial education. You can't say it belongs to the Department of Education. We're working with social development. We've got one of our flagship projects is for the Expanded Public Works Program through the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, where the EPWP participants, we've been doing it since 2018. We've reached, I think, more than 60,000 of the learners, of the participants. And our project is the one that's most recognized by the participants. But also an independent study shows that there's an increase of about 10% of these participants that are saving.
Wow.
Because they've now realized that they get a stipend, but their contracts are for 3 months, 6 months, a year. So what do I do with no money when there's no money coming in?
Yeah.
So we're working with, and that kind of strategic government partnership shows now that you're marrying skills development, job creation with financial skills.
Yeah.
So like you said, when you leave and you come into a job, what do I do with this money that I get all of a sudden? And I can tell you the reason why they asked us to come in was because they found that the participants were using the stipend to buy new clothes, get new weaves. So men were doing the wine, woman, and song thing, and they didn't use the money that it was intended to do, to keep them, to sustain them. They didn't know how to save because all of a sudden they got money.
Yeah.
And I go back to your reference that when you're a student, fresh out of varsity, and you get your first paycheck, do you know what most of the first-time employees buy? What do you think they buy? The first thing they buy?
I think they buy a car. Yeah.
They buy a car.
Hey.
So, and they don't buy a car.
Not a car.
They buy a brand new car because I must show that I have arrived. Now, I do not challenge that. I do not agree with it. I accept that it's something that society almost demands. I need to show people I've got a job and I can afford my job. I will sleep in my car, but I've got a car. I've got a brand new car. And I've heard people, youngsters say already.
I've heard people when they get into financial difficulty and you say, why don't you downgrade, maybe sell the car, or and they say, no, I'd rather cry in a BMW than not have one. But Lyndwell, I know, Lyndwell, I know you said you've got something else to do, but I really just want us to talk about the Star Saver and what you do during Money Smart Week. We have Money Smart Week, but a lot of people don't know about these initiatives and what they are meant to do in the education space.
Yeah, so Star Saver is a BASA, the Banking Association. That's their project. So what we used to do is during the Mandana peak, we used to then do the 67 minutes in the schools. They used to give us the curriculum, and then from an FSCA point of view, we used to do it. Nowadays, they've got a different format for it, obviously, and we don't participate as much. But we do actually use some of their materials from time to time. So we do collaborate on the National Consumer Financial Education level that I spoke of, the committee level, we communicate with them. But the Money Smart Week is something that we actually started through the NCFEC, through Treasury. It's based on a model that the city of Chicago did, where they invited all various institutions to do, during a specific week, to do a financial education activity. And we based it on that. And we started it in Gauteng in 2018. And we actually had 4 venues around the country. I think it was Soweto, it was Mamelodi, I think there was one in Attersville, and there was one in Tembisa. And we had a hall where we had people coming in.
Yeah.
Then we realized, but look, now we're keeping it to Gauteng. So why don't we just make this countrywide and have participants, which we call people that are offering the financial education, decide on what activity do you want to do, where do you want to do it.
Yeah.
And we then set up a platform. You can go to the Money Smart Week on the website. You will see during COVID even, we actually hired a studio, and we then asked various institutions in to come and.
You were also there.
Were you there? Yeah. Fantastic. So it was great at that time, and now we're building on that.
Yeah.
Every year, and it's not that you must just in that week do your activity. We encourage people to, during the year, you do your activities, but in that week, you just highlight and elevate your marketing a little bit to show you are firstly part of Money Smart Week. Secondly, you're elevating financial education as a priority. We also have something called World Investor Week, which we do through the IOSCO, through an international organization. So we do World Investor Week, where we have the ringing of the bell at the JSE for financial literacy, but that's more based on investments. Okay, but I think these kinds of collaboration is very important. And again, coming back to what I said earlier on, we must speak from the same voice.
Yes.
we must have the same thing going out there, and we must have the same approach, because we spoke about that thread.
Yes.
And I think probably one of the last things we want to speak about now is we speak about the thread, your life events, when something happens, to be financially resilient. But now as you grow older, like you said, what is a provident fund? What is a pension fund? What is an annuity? Right? And more recently, we've added the two-part system.
Actually, that will be our next thing to talk about as soon as you are done.
Yeah, so I thought, let me lead you into that, so that we look at the whole spectrum. And for us, life events or life experience, we've actually moved to life experience, where we actually look at what happens when somebody passes on in your family. What happens when you get divorced? What happens when the child is born? Whether the child is born within wedlock or out of wedlock. Remember, we've got a lot of unmarried mothers out there. How do you cope? Do you only want to depend on the grant that you're going to get? Or as a single parent, what do you do? Okay? We have couples living together. So what is we did a nice project during Valentine's, we call it Valentine's Month. Relationships and money. So.
Whoa, that's a topic that is hectic. Look at nothing.
He's
Wow.
smiling, yeah.
Many relationships are broken because of money, And I always encourage young people to say, when you are still courting that person, start talking money. Start talking money personalities. Start understanding. What is their understanding? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? So that by the time you solidify, maybe you get married, you already know. That is so critical to really pick up that money conversation.
Exactly. And I'm not even talking about getting married. I'm talking about you living together. And at some stage you decide, but you don't want to live together anymore. So now I bought the fridge. When you bought the TV, you bought this thing, and I spend so much on groceries every month. And so when you break up, do you carry out everything that you had, that you bought into the relationship? When you signed the lease for your rental, or when did you buy the house together or the apartment together?
What happened?
What happens? And if you don't talk about it during your relationship, while it's still happening, while you still lovey-dovey, and you still love one another, and you still want to talk to one another, because when things go south, when they go wrong, you stop talking, because now you're getting angry. And if you move into the marriage situation, it becomes even worse, because now when the word divorce comes up, now it is even worse, because you are either married in community of property, or there was an anti-nuptial agreement. Who gets what at the end of the day? And then it becomes a story of coming back to the pension. Oh, but I've got access to your pension, as well, because I've been with you while we were married. I worked just as hard as you, so I'm entitled to half
of what you have. And I just want to touch on this before I forget that, I interviewed Mafalda Mphahleni.
Yes.
Sure you know.
I know quite well.
And of course, you know how Malcolm is, and she was saying one of the big things that couples need to be aware of, especially those that live together, is when they purchase items together, and later on things go sour, there's a financial implication. And she talks about STDs. And at first, she said it's sexually transmitted deaths. And she says, we must think about this, think long and hard, and really make sure that when you separate, the money issues, you can either, when the one party leaves, you can be left with so much debt, move from a place where you were doing so well, but because, you made some decisions while in love, they say we fall in love.
And then we fall out of money.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Just a quick one on that. There's a topic also that a pastor actually wanted us to address, and it is the so-called blessers and blessees. And he said that he had in his congregation these young ladies that would come to him crying because the blesser decided not to do it anymore, and they were now destitute. They were kicked out of the apartment that they had. There's no more income. They didn't know where to go because they didn't see the need to get themselves an education.
Yeah.
They thought that this will be forever, you know. And it's a conversation we sometimes don't really want to have, but it's this conversation that is you as a person, and that is where when we go over to the two-pot system now and retirement, and as a young person, you don't often think about that day that will come when I don't want to work anymore.
You know, they call it present bias,
Yeah.
where we all prioritize the short-term things, immediate gratification, you know, and we delay the long-term things, or we think the retirement is still far off.
Yeah.
And maybe let's go to the two-pot system, because that's one of the things that when I look at it, it can really make you to prioritize short-term over long-term if you haven't thought about it well. And I mean, I'm not against the two-pot system. I think it's got its good and it's got its not so good. But we really need to think carefully, especially because this is money that is meant for your retirement.
Exactly.
And many people argue and they say to me, but what if I don't reach 60? I might as well start boxing this money now. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And especially the last spin you put on it. What if I reach 60? I don't reach 60.
Yeah.
The flip side is, what if I do?
Why did she do?
What if I do this? What if I do reach 80?
Oh.
Okay. And you said early on, 2 out of 10 people can actually retire comfortably. Right. So what does the other 8 do? So how is it that you, and this is where your preparation comes in, and where you have to understand exactly what it is. And if you ask some people that belong to a pension fund, when last did you have a look at your benefit statement? They'll ask you, what's that? So a lot of education needs to be done from the fund itself, and from persons like ourselves. And we do a lot of communication with the pension funds, with the various funds, to say, these are the following things. And if you go onto our website, there's a lot of information around what is a pension fund, what is an annuity. You know, because not all employers offer a pension fund.
Yeah.
You got to use the money that they give you to take out create one. So the two-pot system, like you said, it was created, and I think people need to start using it for the purpose it was created, to provide that little bit of relief that you can get, not to take the money away from you when you are in your retirement years. So the structures that have been set up in place or set in place is of such a nature that you can access some of the money, right? I think the misconception at the beginning was, I'll be able to pay off my house. I'll be able to buy me a new car. I'll be able to do this and that, right? And I think government or the drafters of the legislation, I won't say in their wisdom, but in the process that they did it, they thought, let us set up a system where people can access the money, but that they don't abuse it, that they still have an amount left, so that when they retire, there is something. A lot of people, there were a lot of pro discussions around, I want access to everything. But I think sanity prevailed at the end to say that, look, let's give you 30,000 Rand per year.
Yeah.
Right? And let us make it taxable, obviously, because in the end, when you take some money, when you retire, it's still going to be taxed as well, depending on, obviously, of your marginal rate, etc., or how much you're taking out. So let's set up the system that is accessible, but also protects you on the other side.
Right.
So that's my thoughts around it. And I would really encourage people to really be absolutely sure that you need the money, because we've already heard stories of people going on holidays with some of these monies. Okay? We've already seen that a lot of people have applied through their pension fund.
I saw that on day one, SARS made about 16.8 million or billion just from on day one,
yeah.
from the withdrawal.
So I think the point that you just made now, bringing in SARS, is that you must remember, when you do withdraw 30,000, you are not going to get 30,000. I think this is the important. There's administrative fees, and then there's the tax that you have to pay on that, right? Also remembering, if you do owe SARS some money, they will first take that money away as well.
Yeah.
So you might think, okay, my marginal rate is not so bad, so I'll get out 25,000. Then you forget that last year you still owed SARS another 10,000. So they'll take that 10,000 away and you'll only get 15.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's not money in the bank. It is money to use in emergencies.
And that's why it's called an emergency pot.
It's called an emergency pot.
Yeah.
It's called, well, it's also called, it's called your savings pot. Emergency
Yeah.
savings pot. Okay. And I think the key thing to remember, and this is where the story mongers, those people that like to give you the impression that the government's going to take all your money, that they get it wrong, right? They tell you, take out your money. Take out all your money now. Or resign your job and take out your money. Come invest it with me. And I think we need to be very careful. Up until the 31st of August, all your money is still there. All that money and all the rules that was applicable up to that date still apply.
Yeah.
From the 1st of September, the two plots were split.
Yeah.
10% of what you had, go into the one pot, right? And from now onwards, if you earn 6,000 rand, 6,000 rand goes to your retirement fund. 1/3, 2,000 goes in there, and the other 4,000.
Yeah.
The rate of growth is the same.
Yeah.
I think people are now also under the misconception that my money is now not going to grow at the same rate. The growth rate
is the same if you leave the money in the retirement pot and in the emergency savings pot without touching
it. Yes.
Then it will grow
at the same rate.
So basically it would grow like it was growing before the two-pot system came into effect. However, if you
start
tap
taking
into your emergency savings pot, then the growth will be stifled. So maybe I just want to ask from an FSCA point, are you going to maybe do some education? I'll tell you why. I saw someone posted on TikTok.
Yeah.
They are one of the people that have already withdrawn. And she said, look, I withdrew. And of course, I paid off my credit card, which was 5,000. And then, I don't know, I bought a stove because I needed a stove. And then the other money, I then put it in a savings account to kickstart my journey. Thank you.
Yeah.
I probably paid 12% tax on the money, if I'm just being modest about it. And then you've paid off your credit card of 5,000. And then did you really need to withdraw? Because now you've taken the bulk of the money, put it in a savings account where you might just add 3%. You paid 12% tax. You take the money, you put it in an investment that gives you 4%. It does not make sense. And I think we need to do some education in that space.
So definitely we've started. In fact, we started with the unions.
Yeah.
So we started with the shop stewards to start talking to them about what are the implications, exactly what you spoke about. We drafted scenarios.
Yes.
The kind of scenarios that you spoke about. If you withdraw and you do this, this is the implication from a tax point of view.
Yes.
If you put it in a savings account, the money might even if you leave it there, it's going to grow much greater than that 3% that you're putting it in the savings account. So the understanding, and that is why I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give you any advice. I can give information. But the point is, you need to speak to somebody that can advise you to say, and go speak to your fund manager, speak to your fund administrator. Ask them, and I think a lot of the fund administrators actually employed some financial planners and advisors to actually give you that advice to say, okay, now, what are the implications if I withdraw? What are the implications if I don't withdraw?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, and all of these benefit statements and your fund, they can give you projections. Okay. Go onto these websites and go and look at the calculators. We're also busy developing a calculator, but be careful how you read and interpret those calculators.
Yeah.
because you as a layperson look at it and say, but I can afford to give 10% tax, but I'll get 20,000, but you don't think of how it affects your growth of your fund afterwards.
Yeah. And one of the things that, I believe maybe is one of the good things about the two-pot system, it's got a good and a bad, is that it has exposed that some companies were not even prepared. They were not contributing. So they've been deducting from people and not contributing their monies to the pension or provident fund timelessly. Yeah. And I saw an article where they were talking about how some companies are 2 years behind, 3-4 years behind, and some people put in money to withdraw, thinking they've got something in the emergency savings pot, and to their shock, there's nothing.
Yeah. So that happened. This came to light, especially during COVID, when companies were struggling to actually pay. And the first area they went to, obviously, was, let us see if we get our contribution. We just keep it behind a little bit and so on. So we've the article you saw was probably where we identified some of the companies. We decided we needed to say something. So when we call it the Know Your Rights campaign.
Yes.
So we're doing a Know Your Rights campaign, especially on that also. Go to your fund administrator and make sure that the employer's part was paid over. And they must give you that assurance. And if not, obviously we have the pension funds adjudicator. You can complain to the pension funds adjudicator, and the pension funds adjudicator will then investigate those kinds of issues. But I think it's important, and that's what I spoke about at the beginning, about your responsibility. Sometimes we say, don't worry, those people know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's come to light that those people actually don't know what they're doing, or they don't do what they're supposed to do at the right time.
And actually, it's a money archetype that's called the social bonder, that leaves everything else to people that they believe are experts and they know what they're doing, and people don't check their statements to see whether indeed the money. I was so obsessed with that statement. Every time it came out, I'll be the first one to check, how much do I have,
how much my money goes,
etc. And so it's important for those that are watching, if you haven't been checking, go to your fund administrator, check your statement, see what's going on there. It's your responsibility to do that. It's so sad to, for people to get that shock. Is they are trying to get money out and then there's no money. And then I just want to bring it to an end by saying, so let's just say, other people are thinking that they're going to be withdrawing every year when they have that 30,000, because every tax year you can withdraw.
Once a year.
Going to withdraw. But what they haven't calculated is, like you were saying about the calculators, when I go on retirement, how much will I have? Because that's where the issue now comes in, because when you retire, income ceases.
Yeah.
And now you're withdrawing from what you have saved over the years. What you have left now, you've been taking. And this is where the scammers are going to come in, because at the end, you realize I've been boxing these 30,000. Now I've only got X amount. When I sit with a financial planner, they're telling me this money is going to last me only 5 years. And what if I live for another 30 years? What am I going to do? And of course, then I don't know how these unscrupulous people, I don't know how they get to know who to target, and they come and they say, okay, you've got $1 million. Exactly. Give it to us. In 3 weeks' time, it will be 3 million. How do we get our pensioners and just people to not fall into these scams?
I think the statement that you made earlier around go and check on your statement is quite important. And I think it's a fact that you will not be getting your salary when you retire.
Hobo, they must ask me.
You will not. You're not. Some people say you get 3/4 of your salary. Some people say you only get 1/3 of your salary. So you need to be constantly aware of what is in your pots.
Yes.
You need to be nowadays constantly aware what is in your pots. Or while you still can, say, how do I top this up?
Yes.
What kind of investments do I need to take out? Because some people have this idea that when I retire, I can go on holiday. Remember, when you retire, you're also going to get a salary. It's going to be much less.
Which is coming from your
Savings pot. Oh, sorry, your retirement pot, right? So it's coming from there. So it is important, and again, we mentioned that you speak to a financial advisor. Now, some people believe that my priest, or my sangoma, or my brother-in-law, who just bought himself a new car, or this one, or that one, they know more. They know, because look at them, you know? And it is exactly, if you go to a, if you want legal advice, you go to a lawyer who studied for 6 years.
Exactly.
If you want a doctor, if you want medical advice, you go to a doctor or you go to a herbalist that you trust, right? Now, why would you want to take advice from a pastor or a minister that have not had any financial background? You believe in a faith healer that says, I will pray for you. I will pray for your money and it will grow.
Put your money in a suitcase and leave and come back.
Why would you do that? Yeah. Why would you give your money to somebody without even signing any papers, without having anything? Your belief, and I mean, from a Christian point of view, it's for me, I believe in a certain values. And I can't believe that if I pray to God, God will increase my money. For me, from a religion point of view, that just doesn't make sense.
That's faith. That's,
yeah. So we gotta demystify these things of scamsters and make sure that people actually get the right advice. And again, coming back to what we said earlier on, we need to speak from the same voice. If all of us talk about it and we say, and I also believe financial education should be in your face every day.
yes.
When you wake up, you're on the radio, you see it on the television. When you drive in your car, if you drive the taxi, if you're on the train, wherever you are, there must be some kind of a message that says to you, when you get to work, your boss there should be something on the wall, you know?
Yeah.
And when you leave home, it should be the same thing.
Yeah.
If it's not in your face, people are going to start. And my biggest worry at the moment, and we didn't even touch on it, is the amount of consumerism around gambling
Yes.
and betting.
Yes.
That's currently flooding our televisions and our radio stations. It's literally flooding, especially sports betting. Everybody wants to watch, everybody watches sport. So especially amongst our youth, it's becoming a huge problem that gambling as an addiction. Before we thought it was drugs. You would steal your mother's toaster or, go and sell your television. Now it's gambling. So gambling is an addiction. And I'd really urge those that are putting those consumerisms and those adverts out there to do it very, very responsibly. Because our youth, because they have a challenge with money, they think, if I put my money here.
They also want microwave success, overnight. Success, no patience to build, so they want things instantly.
But that is what the concept of betting is all about. If you go to a casino, the casino will make whatever machine, you will win. You will win, without a doubt, because the algorithms are set up in such a way that you will win. So you win for now, but you will lose a lot more than what you win. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you start off by chasing the win. At the end of the day, you end by chasing the loss.
Exactly.
Because you're trying to make up that loss all the time.
Yeah. And there's actually a money personality called a risker.
Yeah.
That literally does.
Yeah.
Right? And chasing the risk like that. Yeah. So I think for those who are watching, we have to be so careful that if anything looks too good to be true, Run away from it. It probably is not. Anybody that comes to you and says, give me your million, in 2 weeks' time it will be 2 million, 3 million, ask yourself. And it's really about desperation. It's about wanting to get things quickly because probably we didn't save enough or we didn't apply our minds. And that's why it's so important that, as we engage with the two-pot system, we really think thoroughly about it. We look at our own context. We look at, in my family, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, passed at 103.
True.
And on my maternal side, my mom's surviving sister is 95. And my aunts are in their 80s, going for their 90s. So for me,
I hope your retirement fund is covered. Because covering it. Well, it looks like you're going to live a long life.
You'll see in my book, it talks about how, I then realized that, no, I can't just withdraw everything and anything because chances are I will live into my 90s and whatever. So every time you make a financial decision, you have to take into context your own context. Don't go with, people say, oh, I've got FOMO, the fear of missing out. Everybody's tapping into their emergency. Let me also do that.
Yeah.
But you need to think about your own context and how long you probably will live. And the truth of the matter is, when you get to retirement, you will not be able to earn the same as what you used to. You have to make some adjustments. So as we come to a close, Lyndwell, I always ask my guests, and if there's one more thing you'd like to add, you can add, and then I always ask my guests to share a wisdom nugget. And when they think of this podcast, they can think, whoa, he said this, and I will latch on to that, and I will run with that to transform my financial journey.
Yeah. No, look, I think this is something I always say, but before I say it, and it's a common saying that everybody does, but I just wanted to add to the gambling issues. We all want to tata my chance.
Yeah.
But not everybody tata my millions.
Yeah.
If you look at your friends that are tata my chancing and ask them, how many of you are tata my millions?
No millions.
No millions. Okay? And I believe always, if you spend more than what you earn, you're going to be in trouble. You will always be in trouble. Okay? So don't give the mashonistas an excuse to come knock on your door. Okay? Don't give anybody an excuse to change your lifestyle. If you are in control of your money, and I think the emphasis is on my money, it's my money. I'm not going to allow anybody else to come to me and say, give me your money, without making sure that I'm dealing with somebody that's authorized to sell me a product, or with somebody that knows exactly what they're talking about. Being a financial advisor, an authorized one, by the way, and authorized to deal with that specific service or that specific product.
Be in control of your money. Be careful who you give your money to. And I think that's such a great message. Thank you so much, Lyndwell, for your time. We really, really appreciate you. And for you, our viewers, I hope that you will find the many nuggets that are contained in this episode. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Click on that subscribe button and do not miss any of our upcoming episodes. I think what we're doing here is to really empower you with the wisdom that you need to manage your finances. Until next time, thank you.